Bismillah, walhamdulillah, walhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. Okay, brothers, we're in lesson 11. Inshallah, just a quick review. Part 1, session 1, we're going to talk about proofs. What we've been talking about, reviewing the proofs that Allah Ta'ala exists without being in a direction or location. Last week we talked briefly about it. The principle that about revelation and reason. Inshallah, we'll talk about how the Sunni Muslims understand the use of reason in relation to revelation. And in session 2, we mentioned the 13 attributes. This week we'll mention the proofs from the Quran, inshallah. And in the last session, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will talk about the Genesis, the beginning of creation. And there's a famous hadith was reported by one of the companions. His name is Imran ibn Hussein. So, inshallah, let's get started. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So, let's go to part 1. Proofs that Allah Ta'ala exists without a place or direction. How did we define direction before? How did we define direction?
When we indicated the meaning?
Yeah, the meaning. What's the meaning of direction? How do we define direction? The comparison
of another.
Comparison of the position of one object in relation to the position of another object. Object or spatial entity. So we know that Allah is not in a direction because Allah is not an object or a spatial entity. And Allah Ta'ala is not in a position, is not in a place. So direction is inapplicable to Allah. And if we speak of the highness of Allah, we don't mean a highness of altitude, of direction, but a highness of what? Status and greatness.
Right.
And even in English, we mentioned they would refer to the king as what? Your royal highness. Although they did not mean the king is situated in the highest location in the kingdom.
By status.
In their society, by a status. So it's very easy. So that's just to quickly review it linguistically. So we mentioned from the Quran a proof that the Sunnis use that Allah exists without a place. What's a proof from the Quran? Laysa kamithlihi shay, which means what? There is absolutely nothing like Allah whatsoever. That's the meaning. And this is the meaning of the verse. There is absolutely nothing like Allah whatsoever. And we mentioned because we're talking to a person who claims to be a Muslim, the first source we will quote is what? Quran. The second source, typically, we will quote is what?
The hadith.
The hadith. Because they claim to be Muslim. And what was a hadith that we mentioned? That's a proof that Allah Ta'ala, that the scholars use as a proof that Allah exists without being in that place. What's a proof from the hadith, from the sayings of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that Allah exists without being in a location or place.
Allah not needing the creation, does not need to create, but Emerald 99.
That's from the Quran.
From the Quran.
Yeah, from the hadith.
Okay.
Because that's a proof from the Quran that Allah doesn't need the creation, so place is not Allah Ta'ala, Allah is not dependent upon
Allah was existing before the beginning of the creation.
Yeah, I want another hadith.
That's Quran.
Yeah, no, that's good what he said, but I want to go another one. Because we're going to talk about that in a little while, inshallah. Another hadith we mentioned. I know you brothers. This is why not only you got to write it, you got to review it.
I got to remember.
Yeah, in the morning time, it's good. After you pray Fajr,
remember.
whatever your lesson was, review it. Take you 5 minutes. Not like when you sit for the whole lesson, but when you review it, that's one of the benefits of writing it down. You can review the whole lesson, say in 10 minutes. It takes us time.
Nothing is
Yeah.
nothing is above Allah nor beneath.
Yeah, this is the hadith. This is a summary of the hadith in which the Prophet said he made dua, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said, "Oh Allah, you are al-Zahir and there is nothing above you." And he said, "You are al-Batin and there is nothing below." Yeah. So this is, he said, "Anta Zahir," not "Oh Allah," but you are al-Zahir. No. So the hadith, to summarize, we're not going to write it all out, but the hadith mentions nothing is above or below Allah. And we already said, well, above is a direction and below is a what? Direction. And we said direction is inapplicable to Allah.
So is it indicated for the hadith al-Batin?
Al-Batin is one of the names of Allah. It's in the hadith, yeah. Al-Zahir, the hadith in Arabic is, and you, or we say in English, you are Al-Zahir, one of the names of Allah. There's nothing above you, and you are Al-Batin, there's nothing beneath you. Yeah, so the name Al-Batin is mentioned here. Al-Zahir means the one whose existence is evident. Al-Batin, the one who cannot be imagined. No. Okay. And then the third source we said would be what? Scholars proof.
At-Tahawi.
At-Tahawi. What did At-Tahawi say?
Allah is supremely clear of all boundaries, extremities, sides, origins.
Organs.
Organs.
Yeah, and also origins. He's not from something. But organs.
And small body parts, and none of the 6 directions contain Allah, as is the case with all originated beings.
There you go. That's it. So the saying of At-Tahawi. There are other sayings, but this is so powerful because he mentions Allah is clear of what? All bodily characteristics and clear of what? Directions.
Right.
Yeah. So this is summarizing the statement. Allah is clear of spatial characteristics and directions. This is not the statement itself. This is a summary of the statement. Because as Brother Tariq mentioned, he said that Ta'ala, meaning Allah, is supremely clear of all boundaries, extremities, sides. So what's that? These are what? Spatial characteristics. Extremities, limits, boundaries, same things, limits. Sides, still what? Limits. So that something occupies what space? If it's a two-dimensional shape like this circle, doesn't it have what? Boundaries?
Yes.
It has extremities. It has limits. So Allah Ta'ala is clear of all of that. Or if you're talking about a three-dimensional object like the phone, it has what? Spatial characteristics of what? Boundaries, extremities, sides. Allah Ta'ala is clear of all of that. And the second part, At-Tahawi says none of the 6 directions contain Allah. So again, this is a what? Object. It exists, or spatial entity. It exists in relation to what? Other spatial entities. But Allah is not a spatial entity, so you cannot speak about Him being in a what? Direction or in a location. Easy for the one that Allah opens the heart to make it easy to understand. The name At-Tahawi, underline these T's because it's a thick T. It's not like an as-sirat. And the same is At-Tahawi with a light H.
At-Tahawi. At-Tahawi.
He was from Egypt.
He was a scholar.
Yes, big scholar.
At-Tahawi.
Now, so we mentioned what? 3 categories of proofs. There was the 4th category. What was the 4th category?
4th category is rational proof.
The rational proofs. And I like to use these because when you mention from the Quran Like, for example, when you debate with the Wahhabi and you tell him about the Quran, you tell him Laysa kamithlihi shay, he doesn't what? Understand. Because he understands God to be a big giant object, dissimilar, unlike other objects. Whereas we would say God is not an object, and the characteristics of objects don't apply to it. But they don't understand that. If you mention about the hadith, he's going to mention other hadith that he likes to what? Twist, and he gives his own opinion about what that hadith means. But if you mention what the scholars say, they will say some things from what scholars said, but they will what? Twist what they say. But the rational proof, there's no way you can what? Misinterpret the rational proof. You can misinterpret, a person can misinterpret the Quran, a person can misinterpret a saying of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A person can misinterpret what the scholars have what said. But you can't misinterpret the what? Rational proof. And what does a Wahhabi say? We don't use rational proofs. Because they know if you use reason, if you examine their belief critically, you would see it's what? It's invalid, it's false. And let's talk about this and we'll connect it with the rational proof. Revelation and reason. We wrote it last week. What was the quote we wrote last week? About revelation and reason.
Muslim beliefs known from revelation and complies with the sound mind.
The Muslim belief is from revelation, but it complies with the reason here. We don't mean cause, we mean what? Logic, rational sound. So we don't mean cause. Sometimes we say reason, what's the reason for this? Here we mean using reason, meaning
with the mind,
the intellect, the sound mind. So there's not anything in our belief in God that contradicts reason. As for the Wahhabi, what does he do? He contradicts the Quran. This is the Wahhabi. Contradicts the Quran. Contradicts the Hadith. Contradicts reason. Contradicts himself. So the Wahhabi, he contradicts the Quran, he contradicts the Hadith, he contradicts the judgment of reason, and he contradicts himself. So let's go through this. We mentioned already that there's not anything in our belief in the Creator or in the prophets. I mean, our belief in the prophets is not irrational. It's not irrational. The belief in the afterlife is not something irrational. This is what the atheists may say. No, it's nothing. We mentioned that even they admit there are things that exist that are beyond their senses. Don't they believe in infrared light and they believe in what? Ultraviolet light? Although they are beyond our what?
Imagination.
No, beyond our senses.
Sight.
Yeah, they're beyond our senses. So even though they may use devices to perceive these things, but they are still what? Beyond their senses. And it's very well conceivable, even by their model, that there are things that are that exist that are beyond the what can be picked up by their devices. Isn't it? I mean, we're in this room. This room has what? Television waves in it, TV waves in it, radio waves, Wi-Fi. Yet, as we are, unless we have a device, we don't what?
Pick it up.
We don't pick it up. We don't perceive it. But if you have a device, you open up your phone, you can what? Get the You can pick up a radio. You get AM, FM, radio, whatever. Because you have devices, but those things are in whatever form they are here. So the fact that we don't perceive something does not mean it doesn't exist. Just like we don't see other people's minds. We cannot perceive it. So the fact that something may be beyond our senses doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So the atheists, when they say, oh, you believe in the afterlife and this is illogical, there's nothing illogical about it. Likewise, we talk about the miracles. The miracles, they'll say believing in the miracles is illogical. No, the miracles don't contradict logic. They contradict what? The way things normally happen. But who's the creator? Allah. Okay, let's go through this quickly, inshallah. So, as we said, there's nothing in our belief that contradicts. Our belief comes from revelation, but it does not contradict what? Reason. You look at the Christian belief. Now, they claim their Bible is a revelation. It's not, but they claim. But their belief contradicts what? Reason. Doesn't it? Yeah, to say that God is one but three at the same time, to say that God knows everything but he could not find Adam and Eve, these are contradictions. So they contradict the intellect and even contradict their own book, because they claim that God knows everything and they say he couldn't find Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
So that's a contradiction of reason, because reason would say God knows everything, and it's even a contradiction of their own book. Yeah. So they're not consistent. Also, the Wahhabis aren't consistent, because when we said they contradict the Quran, because we mentioned what laysa kamithlihi shay. There's absolutely nothing like Allah whatsoever. And we mentioned another verse that Allahu Samad. Allah doesn't need any of the creations, and all the creations are dependent upon Allah. So that being so, that means Allah exists without a place. So, but they don't understand what those verses mean. And they attribute place or direction. Same, I mean, the implication is the same. They attribute direction to Allah Ta'ala. In reality, because they contradict the Quran. They contradict the hadith we just mentioned. The Prophet said there's nothing above, nothing below Allah. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So they claim Allah is literally situated above. And then at nighttime they say he comes down beneath Jesus.
That's a contradiction.
That's a contradiction. Because they don't understand the hadith, you don't take all the hadith literally. And we'll get to that other part. He contradicts reason because we know Allah is one, the creator of everything, the one who was before space and time, would not be what? In a direction or in a location. So this is the judgment of reason. How do we know God existed before space or time? It's from the Quran, but also from your mind. From your mind. Your mind. And the Wahhabi also contradicts himself. Why? Because first his principle is what he claims, the Wahhabi claims. One must take all the verses, meaning verses of the Quran and Hadith, literally. This is his principle about the verses in Hadith about Allah. They say we have to take all of them literally. That's what they claim. Well, there's a verse in the Quran that mentions that we mentioned that if you took it literally, wherever you turn is the face of Allah. But the Wahhabis believe Allah is what? Above. But wherever you turn, when you make sujood, you go down. You're facing what direction? Down. Even in Surah Al-Alaq, it mentions Al-Alaq that at the end of it says wasjud waqtarib. Make sujood to get close, meaning get close to Allah. But it doesn't mean getting close by what? Distance or direction. No. It means it's showing your what? Humbleness. Like you may say about a brother, oh, I'm close to that brother. He might be in another state. You still can be what? You are what? You feel emotionally close to this person. So the closeness to Allah is not by direction or distance, but meaning closeness what? Through obedience.
Obedience.
Through obedience. Just as somebody you say, man, he's distant. Meaning he's distant from obedience to Allah. Doesn't mean he's physically far from the Creator, because the Creator is not in a location. But the Wahhabis, they claim you have to take every verse in Hadith literally. Do they apply that rule? No. So they what? The Wahhabi contradicts himself. We mentioned the other verse that if one took it literally, that everything will be annihilated except the face of Allah, if one took it literally. So the Wahhabis believe Allah has hands and fingers and a shin and 2 feet. So if you took that verse literally, then the meaning, the implication of it would mean that these other things that they attribute to Allah will be what? Annihilated. You follow? So the Wahhabi contradicts himself. As for us, our belief fits with what? Quran. It fits with what? Hadith. It fits with what? Reason. And we do not what? Contradict ourselves. And that when you debate with them, they never can find a contradiction in what we say. All they'll do is they'll say this is philosophy. No, we're showing that a statement has what? Then we say words have meaning, statements have what? Implications. To say that Allah is literally situated most high, and then at night goes down to the first heaven, and they claim that location is the indication of status. They claim that location, the higher the location, the higher the what? Status, according to their claim. Also, so that would mean Jesus, who's in the what? Second heaven, and according to them Allah is in the first heaven, then Jesus at least part of the time would allegedly have a higher status than his creator.
If it's in the Quran, there's nothing above.
There's no the hadith, nothing above or below Allah. And we know there's nothing like Allah whatsoever. So direction, distance doesn't apply. And to claim, and then when you mention this about what they claim about God allegedly descending, that according to that claim, this is clear contradiction to their own belief. But they'll tell you this is philosophy. They made the statement, and we're showing what the statement what implies. This is what the statement what leads to. That's to me. This is what
contradiction.
And they contradict themselves. And when you show their own contradictions, you show them this is you're contradicting yourself. They'll just keep going on and on. It's like they're not phased. So this shows you that Allah Ta'ala guides whomever He wills. Yeah, they're not phased when you show them his own contradictions.
And this evolves out of not having the proper belief.
I'm glad you said that. Because what is their fundamental assumption about God? That He's some sort of spatial entity. So they started from the wrong what? Premise. The Wahhabi started from the premise that God is some sort of shape or form. And then when they read these verses of Quran or the Hadith that apparently give that meaning, they stuck to the apparent meaning. For us, we start from what? What is our foundation? The Creator absolutely does not resemble or need any of the creations. So therefore, any verse that apparently, like the most literal meaning, would give the apparent meaning that God is in a location, that God is literally everywhere, God is in our throat, etc. You know that those verses or hadith are not taken literally. They're not taken literally. So that's how we deal with this. And it's easy. That's easy. But their belief, you see, they claim they have to take all the verses literally, then they'll turn around and what? Not take the verses literally. Because they don't have a sound standard. Because once they believe God is a body, then they'll believe certain body bodily characteristics are valid for God, but other bodily characteristics are not valid for God. They're confused. For us, we say no bodily or spatial characteristics are valid for Allah Ta'ala, because Allah Ta'ala created space and everything that dwells within space.
Don't lead to confusion.
No confusion. Okay, inshallah, let's stop this session. Walhamdulillah wa sallallahu ala rasulillah.